Here's everything that happened when the Skinwalker Ranch team launched rockets into the Triangle in Season 7, Episode 8, Rocket Men. For years, the Triangle has been the single most talked about location on the entire ranch. It's the area where strange aerial phenomena have been documented again and again, where instruments behave erratically, and where two specific anomalies have kept the research team and the fanbase obsessed season after season: the Bubble and the Blob. If you've followed this show from the beginning, you already know these two terms carry weight. They're not throwaway nicknames. They represent something the team has tracked, measured, and tried to understand for years, without ever fully pinning down what's actually happening up there. And in this episode, titled Rocket Men, the team finally takes one of the most direct, physical approaches they've ever attempted to get answers. Instead of relying purely on ground sensors, drones, or passive observation, the team decides to go straight at the source. They build and launch specialized, instrument-loaded rockets, designed specifically to fly directly into the airspace above the Triangle. The goal is simple in concept but incredibly ambitious in execution: pierce the layer where the Bubble and the Blob are believed to exist, and pull back real data from inside the anomaly itself, rather than observing it from a distance. Let's slow down for a moment and really sit with why this approach is such a big deal for this franchise specifically. Skinwalker Ranch has built its entire identity around the idea of patient, methodical investigation. Season after season, viewers have watched the team dig holes, deploy ground-penetrating radar, fly drones over messes, and set up sensor arrays designed to catch even the smallest fluctuation in the environment. That style of investigation has its strengths. It's careful, it's repeatable. It builds a long-term record of data that the team can return to and compare against new findings. But it also has a limitation that's been obvious to longtime viewers for years. You can only learn so much from the ground looking up. At some point, if you want to understand what's actually happening in the airspace above the Triangle, you have to find a way to get up there yourself. Or at least send something up there that can report back. Rocket Men is the episode where that idea finally moves from theory to execution. Now let's talk about why the Bubble and the Blob specifically have become such a focal point of the investigation. If you're newer to the show, you might be wondering what exactly these two phenomena even are. Over the course of this series, they've become some of the most persistent mysteries tied to the ranch's atmosphere. The Bubble refers to a kind of energetic or atmospheric field that seems to sit above the Triangle, almost like an invisible dome or boundary layer that interacts with equipment, signals, and sometimes even the behavior of animals and people on the ground. The Blob, meanwhile, has been associated with strange readings, shifting density, and inconsistent behavior that doesn't match any conventional weather pattern or environmental explanation the team has been able to identify through normal means. Both of these things have shown up on sensors before. Both have caused confusion, debate, and disagreement among the scientists working the case. And both have remained, until this episode, frustratingly out of reach. You can detect something from below. You can see its effects ripple through instrumentation, through camera equipment, through the behavior of drones flying nearby. But getting inside it, sampling it directly, measuring its internal properties rather than just its external effects, that's a completely different challenge. It's the difference between studying a storm by watching the clouds from your window and actually flying a plane into the eye of it. And that's exactly the kind of leap Rocket Men represents. So picture the setup. The team isn't just lobbing something into the sky and hoping for the best. These are specialized rockets, built specifically for this mission, loaded with instruments designed to capture data the moment they cross into that airspace above the Triangle. Every choice here matters: altitude, trajectory, timing, the type of sensors on board, the materials used to withstand whatever conditions exist up there. This is a calculated, engineered attempt to do something the team has wanted to do for a long time: get a read from inside the phenomenon, instead of just watching it from the ground. Think about the logistics alone. Designing a rocket capable of carrying sensitive instrumentation into a specific, narrow zone of airspace isn't something you do casually. It requires precision, It requires the team to have a working theory about where exactly the bubble and the blob are located, how high they sit, how large the area is that needs to be targeted. Any miscalculation could mean missing the anomaly entirely, or worse, damaging expensive equipment for nothing. The fact that the team commits to this approach tells you something important. They're confident enough in their existing data to believe they know roughly where to aim. That confidence didn't come out of nowhere. It's the product of years of prior seasons, prior sensor readings, prior near misses that have slowly built a working map of where this phenomenon tends to manifest.
It's worth remembering just how long the road to this moment has actually been.
Viewers who have followed the show since its earlier seasons know that the triangle wasn't always treated as the central mystery it's become. In the beginning, the team was spread thin across the entire property, investigating everything from strange lights near the tree line to unexplained cattle activity, to odd readings picked up near the old barns and outbuildings. Over time, though, the data kept pointing back to one specific stretch of land, the area now known simply as the Triangle. And within that area, the bubble and the blob emerged as the two phenomena that resisted every conventional explanation the team threw at them. Rocketman is, in many ways, the culmination of that slow narrowing of focus, years of broad investigation, eventually funneling down into one precise high-stakes operation. Now, here's where the episode delivers on its promise. During the operation, the team doesn't just collect more ambiguous data to argue about later. They make a discovery, a real one, something significant enough that it offers a potential explanation for the bizarre and unexplained phenomena that have plagued the ranch for years. Think about how big that statement actually is. This isn't a small show that hints at answers, and then pulls back, the way the franchise sometimes has in past seasons. This is a breakthrough moment. The kind of payoff that longtime viewers have been waiting for since the bubble and the blob were first introduced. What makes this even more compelling is the way the show has built toward this exact kind of moment. Season after season, the pattern on Skinwalker Ranch has often been the same. Gather data, form a theory, test that theory, and either confirm a small piece of the puzzle, or get hit with something that raises even more questions. Rocketman breaks that pattern in a meaningful way. Instead of ending with more uncertainty, the rocket operation produces results that actually start connecting dots. For a show built on mystery, that's a rare and valuable shift. And it's exactly the kind of moment that tends to define a season in hindsight. If you think about the bigger picture of what this could mean for the franchise going forward, it's worth considering carefully. The Triangle has always been treated as the epicenter of activity on the ranch. Nearly every major theory the team has explored, whether it involves underground tunnels, electromagnetic anomalies, or unexplained aerial activity, eventually circles back to this one specific area. If the team has truly found a credible explanation tied to what's happening in that airspace, that doesn't just answer one isolated question. It potentially reshapes how every other piece of evidence from the ranch gets interpreted moving forward. Sensor anomalies, equipment malfunctions, strange sightings near that area, all of it could suddenly make a lot more sense if the source mechanism behind the bubble and the blob has finally been identified. Of course, with a discovery this significant, the natural question becomes what the team does with it next. Do they treat this as confirmation and move toward a deeper investigation built around this new understanding? Do other members of the team push back or question whether the data is being interpreted correctly? Skinwalker Ranch has never been a show where one discovery ends a debate completely, and that tension, the back and forth between excitement over a breakthrough and the scientific caution required to validate it, is part of what makes this franchise so watchable in the first place. Even when the team finds something promising, the show rarely lets that finding go unchallenged. Someone always asks the harder question. Could this be a coincidence? Could there be a simpler explanation? Does this data hold up under scrutiny from every angle? This dynamic has played out repeatedly across the show's history, and it's part of what separates this franchise from other paranormal or unexplained phenomena programs. Rather than presenting every strange reading as definitive proof of something extraordinary, the team, and by extension the show itself, tends to hold its findings up against the harshest possible scrutiny. That means even a breakthrough as significant as the one in Rocketman is likely to be treated with a mix of excitement and caution on screen. Expect discussion, expect pushback, and expect the team to talk through alternative explanations before fully committing to any single interpretation of what the rocket data actually shows. It's also worth pointing out how this episode fits into the larger arc of Season 7. By this point in the season, the show has spent a significant amount of time building anticipation around the triangle specifically. Viewers have watched the team return to this area again and again, refining their approach, trying new instruments, adjusting their theories based on what previous attempts revealed or failed to reveal. Rocketman feels like the payoff to that buildup, the moment where a more aggressive, direct method actually produces results instead of more dead ends. It's the kind of episode that rewards viewers who have stuck with the slower, methodical episodes earlier in the season, because all of that groundwork pays off here in a tangible way. Season 7 as a whole has leaned heavily into escalation, taking tools and techniques from earlier seasons and pushing them further than before. Rocketman fits that pattern perfectly. It's not just a continuation of past sensor work, it's an evolution of it, taking the same underlying question, what exactly are the bubble and the blob, and attacking it with a completely new method. That willingness to escalate, rather than repeat, is part of what has kept the show feeling fresh this deep into its run, and Rocketman stands as one of the clearest examples of that escalation paying off. Let's also talk about the symbolism of the episode title itself, Rocketman. It's a fitting name, not just because of the literal rockets used in the mission, but because of what the mission represents. This is the team taking matters into their own hands in the most literal way possible, launching themselves, or at least their instruments, directly into the unknown, rather than waiting for the unknown to reveal itself on its own terms. That shift in approach, from passive observation to active intervention, says a lot about where the investigation stands at this point in the series. It suggests a level of confidence and urgency that wasn't always present in earlier seasons, when the team was still mapping out the basics of what they were even dealing with. For fans who have followed the data-heavy side of the show, this episode is likely to be especially satisfying. The franchise has built a reputation for taking its science seriously, bringing in credentialed experts, using real instrumentation, and trying to apply rigorous methodology to phenomena that resist easy explanation. Rocketman appears to lean fully into that identity, using actual rocket-based instrumentation as a tool for legitimate atmospheric and environmental analysis, rather than relying on speculation alone.
That commitment to a scientific approach, part of why this show has managed to maintain credibility with viewers who are normally skeptical of paranormal or unexplained phenomena content.
And that's part of why this discovery carries so much weight. It's not a vague gut feeling or an unconfirmed theory floated by one team member during a casual conversation. It's the direct result of a planned technical operations, specifically designed to test the bubble and the blob. When the answer comes from that kind of structured, instrument-based approach, it carries a different level of credibility than past breakthroughs the show has teased. Viewers who have been burned before by cliffhangers that never fully resolved may find this episode refreshing precisely because it commits to an actual outcome instead of leaving the door open indefinitely. If you're trying to predict where the story goes from here, it's reasonable to expect this discovery to influence the direction of the rest of the season. A finding this central to the Triangle's behavior likely won't be treated as a closed chapter. Instead, expect the team to use this new information as a foundation, testing it further, trying to replicate results, and seeing whether it holds up against other anomalies recorded elsewhere on the property. That's been the pattern with major findings on this show in the past, and there's no reason to think Rocketmen will be treated any differently. It's also worth thinking about how a discovery like this might affect the relationships and dynamics within the team itself. Throughout the show's run, viewers have seen moments where a major finding creates excitement but also friction. Different team members interpreting the same data in different ways, some pushing to move faster, others urging caution before drawing conclusions. A breakthrough of this scale, tied directly to two of the ranch's most enduring mysteries, is exactly the kind of moment that tends to bring those dynamics to the surface. Whether the team ultimately agrees on what the data means or continues to debate it, that internal back and forth is part of what makes discoveries like this land with real weight, rather than feeling like a simple, tidy resolution. There's also the broader question of how this affects the ranch's reputation among skeptics and believers alike. The bubble and the blob have often been cited by skeptics as unexplained quirks that could eventually be tied to mundane atmospheric conditions, while believers have pointed to them as evidence of something far stranger happening above the triangle. A credible scientific explanation, if it holds up to scrutiny, has the potential to shift that conversation in a real way, regardless of which side of the debate you personally land on. It's rare for a show like this to produce a finding that both camps might actually take seriously. But that's exactly the kind of territory Rocketmen seems to be entering. What's clear from this episode is that the investigation into Skinwalker Ranch continues to evolve. This isn't a show standing still, repeating the same observational tactics season after season. Rocketmen represents a tangible escalation in method, and the payoff in this episode suggests that escalation was worth it. For a franchise that has spent years collecting data points without always connecting them into a clear narrative, an episode like this, one that actually moves the needle on a years-long mystery, stands out as one of the more important entries in the show's history. It's also worth considering how this episode might play differently for two types of viewers: the longtime fans who have followed every twist of the bubble and the blob storyline since it first emerged, and newer viewers who are just now getting introduced to these terms. For longtime fans, this episode likely feels like a payoff years in the making, a moment where persistence and methodical investigation finally produces something concrete. For newer viewers, Rocketmen probably serves as a strong entry point into understanding just how central this airspace mystery has become to the larger story of the ranch. Either way, the episode manages to deliver something meaningful to both groups, which isn't always an easy balance for a show this deep into its run. Let's also think about the broader implications of using rocket-based instrumentation for this kind of investigation. Most aerial anomaly research on the show up to this point has relied on drones, helicopters, or fixed sensor towers, tools that operate within a certain altitude range and a certain set of limitations. Rockets open up an entirely different possibility: the ability to briefly access airspace that other methods simply can't reach quickly or precisely enough. That's a meaningful, technical shift, and it suggests the team has been thinking creatively about how to solve a problem that more conventional tools haven't been able to crack. It also raises the question of whether this approach could become a recurring tool in future investigations, not just a one-time experiment. Beyond the immediate technical achievement, there's also a narrative significance to the fact that this breakthrough happens specifically through a rocket launch, rather than through more passive means. It reflects a broader shift in how the team approaches the ranch's mysteries as the show has matured, less waiting for phenomena to reveal themselves on their own schedule, and more actively engineering situations designed to force answers into the open. That proactive mindset has become increasingly common in recent seasons, and Rocketmen might be the clearest example yet of that mindset producing a real, verifiable result. It's also worth noting how this kind of breakthrough tends to ripple outward into the broader conversation among fans and researchers who follow the show closely. Findings tied directly to the bubble and the blob have historically sparked extensive discussion, comparison to historical sightings, and renewed interest in older episodes where these phenomena first appeared.
A new, potential explanation.
Arriving through such a direct and technical method is likely to reignite that kind of conversation, prompting viewers to revisit earlier seasons with this new context in mind. So to summarize where things land by the end of Rocketmen, the team set out with a bold, direct plan. Launching instrument-loaded rockets straight into the airspace above the triangle to finally get inside the bubble and the blob. And rather than coming away with more unanswered questions, they walk away with a genuine breakthrough, one that offers a real, potential explanation for phenomena that have defined this location for years. It's a rare moment of clarity in a show that has built its entire identity around mystery. and it's likely to be remembered as one of the pivotal episodes of Season 7. Now I want to hear from you. What was the biggest moment of this episode? And what do you think happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more episode breakdowns and spoilers.